As the White House faces a storm of Russia-related questions today, tomorrow the president's pick to lead the Justice Department is expected to tell senators it is, quote, vitally important that Robert Mueller be allowed to complete his investigation. That's according to new excerpts released by the Associated Press. That'll be part of William Barr's confirmation hearing beginning 23 hours and 30 minutes from this exact moment. And Democrats are already zeroing in on the 19-page memo Barr sent top Justice Department officials criticizing the investigation. Here's Democratic Senator Dick Durbin.
I'm worried about it. I mean, clearly he's a good lawyer, no question. But when it comes to this delicate political situation, the power of the presidency, whether this investigation is warranted, Bill Barr had better give us some ironclad, rock-bottom assurances in terms of his independence and his willingness to step back and let Mueller finish his job.
Let me bring in now NBC's Pete Williams. Pete, that new excerpt from the Associated Press that Barr will assure senators it is vitally important that Mueller finishes his work. Does that surprise you based on your reporting about Bill Barr?
No, and in fact, the Justice Department has released the prepared opening statement. And what he says is, I believe it's in the best interest of everybody that this matter be resolved by allowing the special counsel to complete his work. He says the country needs a credible resolution of these issues and that he won't let partisan politics, personal interests, or any other improper consideration interfere with the investigation. He also says his goal will be to provide as much transparency as he can consistent with the law. I think as a practical matter here, Mueller is basically nearing the end of his work. And in the prepared statement, Barr tips his hat to this a little bit. He says, this is a quote, given his public actions to date, I expect that the special counsel is well along in his investigation. Now, my guess is, frankly, Barr knows a little more than what the public statements are, but nonetheless, he seems to echo that. And as a practical matter, if he is confirmed, his main responsibility will be deciding how it's transmitted, the report is transmitted to the Congress and made public. Now, that's no small thing, but I think most of the overseeing of the investigation itself is pretty well done or will be done by Rod Rosenstein by the time Barr is confirmed and decides he wants a new deputy attorney general. But clearly he intends to say that he's not going to try to put his foot on Bob Mueller's throat and intends to make that clear in his testimony. He knows that that's just essential for him in order to get confirmation with Republicans as well as Democrats.
Hey, Pete, that line you read from the excerpts that you've just gotten your hands on here that the Justice Department released about transparency, being as transparent as possible, I think you said the quote was. Yes. Is that an indication to you that maybe Bill Barr would be leaning toward releasing at least some of the Mueller report publicly?
Well, yes, and you know, there's been some discussion within the Justice Department about how to handle this before Barr was nominated, and I think their expectation is that this is going to become public. Now, make no mistake about it, and you know this as well as anyone, there's going to be a fight about how much of it gets made public. Because I assume that Mueller's report itself will contain two things that cannot be made public. Grand jury material, which isn't allowed to be made public, and any kind of intelligence information. Those things will have to be redacted. Well, who does the redacting? Will Mueller's people do it? Will the Justice Department do it?
Yeah.
The last I heard, that hadn't been resolved. But that's one thing. And then, as you know, the president may assert executive privilege over anything to do with the obstruction investigation and in terms of what he said to other people in the White House. So there could be fights over that as well.
Pete Williams in our Washington bureau. Pete, thank you much. Thank you for checking out our YouTube channel. Why don't you subscribe? It's really easy. Just click on that button down there. And for more news from MSNBC, click on any of these videos here for the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more videos from MSNBC with our newsletters. Head over to msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up.